This is an area of recent clearfell on Clumber Park. About 100 yards or so just up this track. It's the home of one of our most ferocious and probably feared predators. It's an insect with 6 legs and wings, but this is a species which deserves respect, especially when I'm going to get as close as I am. Well, perhaps you've already seen it and realised what it is that I'm sat at the side of. Yes, I know it's a tree, but it's what's inside the tree, just on the outer face of this trunk here. It is a young and developing hornet's nest. I love hornets. I don't want to be stung by one, but as long as I stay this side of the tree and of the nest and don't disturb or disrupt the hornets as they fly in and out of the nest, I will be fine. However, I'm not going to stay here for much longer. Well, you can see how close this nest is to the path. I fear that this nest won't be going for too much longer. It only needs somebody to report it or a member of the National Trust staff to see it, and I think it will be gone. But otherwise, if people just walk past this nest, it won't be a problem. Hornets and wasp nests are only a problem when people stand in front of the nest and get in the flight line. That's when the guards guarding the entrance to the nest feel that there is a threat. And there's the nest, tucked nicely into this large open crevice as a worker leaves, and one worker is already adding on to around the nest entrance. But above the nest you can see almost a tube-like structure, and above that it almost looks like a mushroom, to be honest, but that's going to form part of the nest eventually. The cells, which are hexagonal and are fixed to one central sort of pillar hanging down from the upper part of the nest, covered by various layers. The outermost one at the moment you can see, but preparations are in place for further additions, and that's what that open tube is at the top of the nest. You'll see how that changes later in the video, but you can see the worker busy adding another layer of wood pulp to the nest. They are amazing constructions. The different layers and different colours of those layers are produced through workers visiting different fence posts, fences, trees, dead branches, chewing it into a pulp, bringing it back. So the different colours of those layers correspond to different places that the worker hornets have got that pulp from. You'll often see wasps chewing lines, vertical lines down fences, and they're doing the same thing and do the same thing to their nests too. But you can see as this worker leaves the nest how open the bottom of the nest is at the moment, but big changes are afoot on that front. Quite remarkable things. And watching them construct the nest and just watching the day-to-day activities of the workers returning to the nest like those, it's quite magical. It's enthralling. You could sit and just watch things all day long. I think so anyway. It's the Hymenopteran equivalent of a fish tank. Very, very entertaining. You may not always like wasps and hornets, but you have to admire their creativity, and you can see that now this is the second visit on 22nd of July. Look at the changes to the nest entrance. It's completely filled in, a much smaller entrance hole to the nest now, which the workers are coming out of, and in greater numbers too. There was a big difference in the number of workers between my visits the 14th of July and the 22nd of July. But here's a little worker I thought was going to come out, and then I thought, is it a guard? Guards usually stay close, if not just inside the entrance, but this one comes out as though it's going to fly. I tend to think now that this is a freshly emerged worker that's come outside for a look but doesn't feel confident enough to go out into the outside world. It even flicks its wings as though it's going to start and fly. But it's acting more like a guard, but I think this is a youngish worker. It inspects those other hornets coming into the nest and watches those leaving the nest. But it does give us a chance to actually look at these fantastic insects. Wasps have a loud enough buzz, but I always think that hornets make wasps sound effeminate. They have a much more meaner and lower buzz, or tone to that buzz. And there you can see this one comes in to join. It doesn't go in the nest though and goes off again. But all the time what worker hornets are around the camera. That's why throughout this video you can hear buzzing, because there's always been 1 or 2, sometimes as many as 8 or 9 around the camera. If you don't like buzzing, I'm sorry about that. Rather an ineffective video without the sound. You can see workers returning to the nest, and now you can see the top right hand part of the nest, those tubes. There's an addition of another one, but they've been extended a little bit and then filled in. I think they will be used as vents, or when more layers have been added to the nest. I don't know, it'll be interesting to see, but I think we might get the whole thing covered over here and not get to see them. That's providing the nest remains, of course. Another worker goes. This nest is perfectly safe where it is, as long as the public don't see it and don't realise it's there. There's a tendency for people to be completely oblivious to hornet and wasp nests. They have no idea that they're there, but the minute they do realise that it's there, the exterminators are called in and the nest is destroyed. 9 times out of 10, completely unnecessary. And here comes a worker with a prey item. Marvellous how they dismember prey almost within a second, split second. The head's off, the legs off, the wings are off. The rest's chewed to a pulp before it knows what's even happened to it, and then brought back to the nest. There's something else being brought in. And lots of the time the workers will bring something in, and then those leaving the nest to go foraging will be removing waste from the larvae and generally tidying the nest. It's a fabulous system. It's a system that works where a colony of hundreds, if not thousands, of wasps or hornets work for the good of each other. There's no falling out, there's no argument, no disagreement. They all know what to do, they all have their jobs to do, and they all work to the best of their ability to do what task they've got. Here's another little glimpse from underneath the entrance. One hornet comes out and will probably venture off it goes. But you can see, you can just about make out the entrance, and that's how it was a week ago. Much more open, but now much more protected and closed up. They are marvellous things, wasps and hornets, and very privileged to be able to see as much of this nest as we can. They're usually tucked in the holes in trees, and I've never seen one exposed in this manner at all. thanks to Nick and Samantha Brownlee who found it. Very occasionally, when doing these videos, an opportunity occurs, a once in a lifetime opportunity to get some footage of something that, well, I've never seen before, and probably the majority of the British public have never seen before. Such an opportunity is in the tree behind me, because I'm back here at Clumber Park again with another 2 updates of the advancement of the nest and the colony of hornets behind me. It's the European Hornet, Vespa crabro, and it's a fabulous thing. It's an insect though that needs to be taken seriously and showed the utmost respect, and that's what I've done during the course of this video. It may seem as though I've been particularly stupid, but when I filmed this nest behind me, the camera has been placed in front of the nest. One of the tripod legs has been extended out so that it's easily retrievable. Well, it wasn't all that easy in the end. As you'll see towards the end of the second video, things got a little bit hairy. But during the course of the 2 lots of video that you're going to see today, which take place over 17 minutes, you'll see a dramatic difference in the nest. The nest has changed in size and in shape, and of course the population of hornets within the nest has also increased at a dramatic rate, especially in the second half of this video, and how they reacted to the camera also changed en masse, and it's a particularly exciting bit of footage that I've got at the end. I took the utmost and greatest care. I've remained sting free throughout the experience, and that's because I know the insects that I'm dealing with. You have to be careful with hornets and wasps, and so use was made of cover, reasonably long arms, a stick and a tripod leg extended outwards. But everything worked out great in the end, and the nest is peaceful as can be. It wasn't like that, as you will see towards the end of the video. But the 4 visits that I've had to this site have showed what remarkable insects hornets are. They are masters of construction, and the nest is just something of awe really to me. I think it's absolutely stunning, created by the workers over hundreds and hundreds of hours. So sit back, make yourself a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, or maybe something a little bit stronger, and enjoy the next 17 minutes. It's the Hymenopteron equivalent of a tropical fish tank really, in a doctor's surgery. But it's remarkable footage. I'm really pleased with it because it's so dramatic. Well, here we are. Another very windy day again. It always seems to be windy when I visit this colony. But you can see great difference in the nest. I'll put a similar kind of shot in from previous visits just to show you how the nest has changed. But those vent-like structures down the right hand side of the nest, as we look at it, have become more extensive, and there's more of them, as you can see here. You can see the different layers of wood pulp, the different colours caused by workers visiting different sources of wood in order to obtain that wood pulp. But those structures down the right hand side of the nest, they don't seem to do anything. They're not sort of entrances to the nest, and whether they're vents or not I don't know, but they all seem to be completely closed off. It may be very different inside the nest itself, and the entrance isn't that what seems to be an obvious entrance at the bottom or near the bottom of the nest. The main entrance to the nest is further below that, and the hornets, the workers themselves, come into the nest or come out of the nest right at the bottom of the screen. But notice the worker, who seems to be quite redundant, at the top of the nest. This one, for the majority of this particular visit on 31st of July, remained like it is now. It did have some interaction with some workers coming to the nest. It wasn't until I reviewed the footage that I realised why it is probably, as I've mentioned, redundant, or it seems to be redundant. It's not having a role as a guard, because otherwise it would be at the bottom of the nest near the nest entrance, but it has one wing, and I think that I may be glorifying it, I don't know, but I think because it only has one wing, it's ineffective and of no use or little use to the colony itself. But you can see there a little bit of activity from it. It does come further down, and it does interact a little bit with some workers returning with food to the nest. Otherwise it sits at the top like that. But the nest, someone remarked in the comment section from the previous video that it's almost like a heart, and indeed it does remind me of a heart. It's an incredible structure. I'd love to see what it's like inside. I know what it's like inside, but I'd still like to see it. But we have to make do with this kind of view. And this view really is a view that I never thought I would get. You can see one worker about to leave the nest, just coming out, having a look around. There goes another one and another one. You can see now, and you can hear as well, lots more activity around the camera. And that activity made it difficult to get the camera away from the nest. It was a good 3 feet away from the actual nest itself, and slightly lower down, so as not to obstruct the worker hornets' flights in and out of the nest, but they still didn't like it. And during the course of this video, this first part on 31st of July, they did start to have a little bit of a go, if not attack, the camera. Once the camera was pulled out of the way, they ceased their interest in the camera. But generally, it was fairly quiet on the 31st of July, but the main differences, the nest was considerably larger and the activity from the hornets was more. There's that redundant worker. You can see now that it's only got the one wing. What an amazing structure though. And there's a guard at the bottom there, look. Make a note of the yellow phase, because you'll see a lot more of those as we get towards later in the video. That worker comes down. It's almost as if it's been cast out by the rest of the colony. More foraging workers coming out, having a look around, and then thinking about flying off. The rate of increase in the numbers of the hornets has quite surprised me, as has the building of the nest. I didn't think it would get as big as how you'll see it in the second part of this video. More guards at the bottom of the nest, at the nest entrance, and you still can't see, even from this angle, that nest entrance. Here comes another one. It's a fascinating thing to watch. It really is, the comings and goings of this colony. As much as people don't like them, you have to admire their success and their ability to work for each other for the good of the colony. But two guards at the bottom, and that lone individual sat quietly at the top of the nest. Of course, that one will be relying on others for food. I actually felt quite sorry for it, that Not so much when you see later in the video if it was still here. But you can see the marvellous structure to the nest as another worker goes off foraging. Increasing noises and attacks now to the camera. And here's a bit more of a distant shot. Our one-winged worker sat at the top of the nest. Guards at the bottom. What an amazing thing. The activity that's going on inside that nest is amazing. And there will probably now almost certainly be 3 lots of, or layers of cells, largest one at the top and then getting smaller. And I just wonder that, or if the nest is being extended inside when these constructions are built, these almost vent-like constructions are built, the inside of the nest, what was the outer part of the nest a few weeks ago, is removed so that space is created. There's also that bit at the top, right at the top, that was started and has been left. I thought that might be developed and come down and over the whole of the nest. But lots of buzzing. If you don't like buzzing, you certainly won't like it in a bit. But there was increased interest in the camera. But I remain sting-free. I have the greatest respect for these, and while I was filming, the camera, as I said, was about 3 feet from the nest itself. There was a zoom on the camera, and I was a good 20 or 30 feet away, sat on a log. Now here's the visit from the 11th of August. This is where it gets interesting and just a tad scary at times. And you can see there, that's the view from the nest, and there's the nest. Even looks bigger from where we see it here. But look at the bottom of the nest, how more populated it is. It gets increasingly more populated. I had to be really careful. I had to wait for a quiet moment before putting the camera in front of the nest. And then it varied in terms of, well, I took 2 lots of footage. One was about 2 or 3 minutes. This is that one, but look at the nest now. What a structure it is. I feel really privileged to have got this. Yeah, I had to be very careful because you have to realise that that nest means everything to the workers. And it really, with wasps and hornets, it's really a case of, well, all for one and one for all sort of thing. This is their life reason. Collecting food for the larvae inside and constructing the nest. The nest, it's amazed me how ever-changing it is. There's almost like a couple of vents that's been opened towards the top of the nest. And you'll notice there's no sign of the one-winged worker. Some construction work going on. It must be a network of some tunnels and underneath the surface here before they get to the main chamber. But you can see now, and you'll hear also, how the population has increased again. So this was about 11 or 12 days after the previous visit here. And what a difference. The nest is much bigger. There's actually a stick propped up in that hole, and the nest is now touching that. When I first got here this morning, I thought someone had been messing and put that stick in and had a go at these, but if they'd have tried that, then they probably wouldn't have lived to tell the tale, not without a number of stings. But I realised that that stick had been there all the time. even going back to my first visit a few weeks ago. But the construction, the rate of construction, the rate of increase in size of the nest, there you can see that stick. You can see now how the nest has completely changed. It's a fabulous structure, it really is. But also look at the number of guards at the base of the nest, at the entrance. The entrance still isn't visible, it's just around that left hand sort of lip in the trunk there. But more workers coming in, more workers coming out, and as you'll hear, increased numbers of workers around the camera. On this visit they did start to become a problem because there was more of them, and wait until the end of this video and you'll see how much of a problem hornets can become. But the general day-to-day activity of this nest goes on with workers coming in there, guards at the bottom checking those workers as they come in. They don't like the camera at all. I thought they might get used to it. This entire clip lasts 8 minutes, but about 3 minutes of that involved me trying to pull the camera away without getting stung. I managed it, but I'm quite surprised that I managed it. If it wasn't for having the tripod leg extended and then having a longer stick to pull it, but I had to be careful and I had to use cover. You have to give these the utmost respect, and it may seem to some of you that I didn't, but I honestly did. I have been stung by hornets. I found it no worse than a wasp sting, to be honest, but as we're near the end of the video, just start to watch the workers and the number of workers around the nest. This is nothing, this is mild, but say lots of workers now having a look at the camera as they come in, and some even on the way out. I thought that if it was just kept out of the main flight line in and just below a little bit, they wouldn't bother about it. They might have a quick look at it, but wouldn't bother about it. How wrong was I? Plenty of workers altering the nest there, just keeping an eye on things. Fascinating to watch, really, really fascinating. But the nest structure itself is just amazing, absolutely amazing. It's a thing of beauty. You might not think what's inside it is a thing of beauty, but it's an amazing feat of construction, almost like a living organism in itself. The little yellow face looking at us from the edge of the tree. You'll be seeing lots of little yellow faces. Another worker comes into the nest. Plenty of other worker hornets coming in too. But this scene is about to change. Still generally quite peaceful. But now the amount of activity starts to change. the camera becomes a stronger focus for attention. And now there's more little yellow faces, all lined up. Word is now getting about within that colony that they're not happy with the camera. More workers start to emerge from the nest. And the amount of hornets flying around the nest now, as more workers flood out, and this is where it starts to get interesting, and it really kicks off at this point. Just watch the number of hornets coming out of the nest. More and more pour out, lots of workers around the camera, and as soon as I pulled the camera away, within a few minutes it all settled down again. Very nice day here. Not be saying that in the next few days we have another storm coming apparently, so we should all be terrified. But I've had a very pleasant wander through the autumn colours of Clumber Park. I've parked on the A614 and walked a couple of 100 yards to look at this tree here, because as many of you will know that's watched the videos over the last few months, this tree behind me holds a nest of hornets. And I'm very pleased to say that the nest has been left throughout. It's been untouched, and the hornets have obviously not bothered anybody, because at the first sign of anyone getting stung, or the mere mention of somebody nearly getting stung, would have seen that nest eradicated, I'm sure. But it hasn't been. But it's also quite sad, this visit, because this will be the last time that I probably film the last of the living hornets, so to speak. There's a lot of dead hornets at the base of the tree now that have dropped out of the nest, and the nest is clearly in severe decline. It's fulfilled its purpose for 2025. Very sad. Strange to say, I've actually grown very fond of those ladies in there. There's very, very few hornets coming and going, actually, the longer I've been sat here. But there's one that's acting as a guard, and that's been quite feisty. There's one you can see just at the side of the nest there, but there's one I think has gone into the nest, but you can see probably some signs of damage. There is a stick underneath the nest. Someone's had a little poke by the looks of it. And they're struggling to light. It's not a warm day today. One has just come in and landed. You'll see it walk up into the nest. But one clear thing, as I am crouched down here at the side of the nest, I think all the larvae and everything is done now, and I can tell that because the last time I came here it was wet, and the waste products from the hornets and the larvae were dropping, was running down. In fact, underneath the camera now, there are a lot of lava too. A few weeks ago, certainly a couple of months ago, I couldn't have sat here right at the side within a few feet of this fabulous hornet's nest. What an experience it's been to produce several videos depicting the life and changing size and nest shape of this, well, a hymenopteran metropolis. It really is. But like many colonies, ultimately it ends in death. But with death in this instance comes succession, because over the last few weeks a number of queens will have left this nest. All young queens, they will have mated and will now be tucked away somewhere, usually under bark, and awaiting the first warm days of next spring. And then all this cycle starts again. I've just been so lucky that this nest has been here in the open and in a place that is very accessible. And the most pleasing thing of all is that it's been left. That's, I think, what pleases me the most. And here's one of the last of the workers clinging to the outside of the nest. Such a shame. But what a thing to be able to film. I'm very pleased at how all these videos came out. Well, the end to something of a soap opera, or a saga at least. The end of the hornet nest here at Clumber Park in 2025. Maybe I'll get the opportunity to take that nest apart. There can be a range of invertebrates that live and dwell in the nests of Hymenoptera. But what a day! And there's some warmth in this sunshine. But now it's time to celebrate the life of this hornet colony with a pint. But now the amount of activity starts to change. The camera becomes a stronger focus for attention. And now there's more little yellow faces all lined up. Word is now getting about within that colony that they're not happy with the camera. More workers start to emerge from the nest. The amount of hornets flying around the nest now, as more workers flood out, and this is where it starts to get interesting, and it really kicks off at this point. Just watch the number of hornets coming out of the nest. More and more pour out, lots of workers around the camera, and as soon as I pulled the camera away, within a few minutes it all settled down again. just on my way to somewhere that I've been several times this year. It's time to take apart the hornet's nest. Hopefully it's still intact. This tree's intact. It's had some of the top branches removed, but it's still probably the most magnificent beech tree I've ever seen, and resplendent in its new coat of autumn finery. It's fabulous. We really are blessed to have such trees and such beautiful autumn colours. It's a lovely day. Lightly overcast. There's even been a mistletoe singing, which is a song that I associate with the early months of the year. Just on the way back to see if the hornet nest is still intact. I wouldn't be surprised if it isn't, since my last visit here over a week ago. We shall see. Well, that's a relief, because I half expected the nest to have been totally destroyed. When I came last week, there was quite a few people walking by, and they were all interested in what I was about to do, but it turned out that there were just too many hornets still present. When I say too many, it was only about 5 or 6. But ideally, when you're going to do what I'm going to do, you don't want any, and hopefully there's none still in residence. Well, there's a little bit of damage to the nest here. It's surprisingly tough. You would think, with it being made of technically paper, that it would be so flimsy, but it isn't. Quite looking forward to seeing how the nest was built inside. Still a marvellous example of ingenuity. You have to appreciate hornets and wasps, whether you like them or not. So let's see if there's anything in there, because these nests can attract specialist invertebrates, number of beetles and flies. Just be nice to see if anything is in there. There may well not be anything of that ilk here at all. Only one way to find out. Seems a shame to take it to bits. I'm just wondering what's the best way of doing this. Do we go in down the side here? I don't want to cut right into it too much and totally destroy what we have. So that's what was in here. These like vent-like structures. They were access points. And there's the first look at the nest inside. And have a bag to collect the material. didn't expect a lacewing. Let me just take this upper part off. Lots and lots of Porcellio woodlice at the back there. In the comb bit here, there's a two-spot ladybird tucked in, and a Tenebrine beetle, which is Nalassus levioctus striatus. We also have a cream-streaked ladybird too. Well, I'm surprised that there are 7, almost 8 rows or layers of cells. This was a big nest. It was bigger than I thought. But the cavity itself isn't as deep as I thought it would be. I expected it to be a bit deeper than that. It's quite shallow. What an amazing structure. That's the bottom layers or tiers of cells. Each tier is supported by the cell above it. There's just one sort of column or support, although of course each tier of cells is also joined onto the tree itself. Well, it's an amazing structure, absolutely standing. I'm a little bit surprised actually as to the layout. I knew that everything would be in tiers. It's great to see it inside. I really thought that when I arrived here this would have been completely destroyed because of the grubs that were here at the base. There's not a sign of any dead workers. There's one dead worker actually as I look now. There's no grubs at the base, and I thought that any mammal that was looking for protein would have investigated and eaten what was at the bottom and then gone in the nest. It's quite fitting that we're able to look at the nest and see what it was like full of hornets. Well, I've removed the lower tiers of the nest, 4 remaining. You can see that at the back of the nest on the inside it was all completely sealed with wood pulp. What a construction. And again, what an opportunity to record. There's lots of ladybirds, harlequins. These cells are pretty full, all harlequins. Harlequins and woodlice. When I came here one evening, or the evening after I last filmed the nest, the tree was full of woodlice. And as you can see, the residents of this nest now are harlequin ladybirds and woodlice too. All the woodlice look to be Porcelia scaba, which is the common rough woodlouse, and say all the ladybirds apart from that one cream streak and a 2-spot ladybird are all harlequins tucked away. They will easily find somewhere to go to. I've got a bit of the nest here, 2 of the layers. You may well be able to see those supports, but what a construction it really is. I never fail to be amazed every time I look at the cells, whether it's the cells of honeybees or wasps, or in this instance hornets. It's not the first time I've had a hornet's nest, but those hexagonal cells, and they are hexagonal for a reason, and it's because by having them hexagonal there's no waste of space. If they'd been circular, you would have, where each cell joins, you would have various gaps, and in order to utilize the limited space that they have, the cells are hexagonal. Someone said that they measure using their antenna, but I don't know. They may well do. Whatever it is, it's a work of genius. It really is. And on top of the cells, they're almost capped off. And rather than being full of the workers and of the young grubs and pupae of the hornets, most of them are now occupied by ladybirds and woodlice too. I thought we'd have one close look. It is dead, you're quite safe. Well, I'm quite safe. But you have to admire these truly marvellous insects. A lot of you will be saying, no, we don't have to admire them at all, but without these kind of predatory insects and invertebrates that do such a huge amount of good for, well, any habitat, including gardens. Nothing in nature is created just to be there. It's created for a purpose, and while everybody loves bumblebees, even though they can sting as much as these, everybody hates wasps and hornets. And of course now everyone's got this thing about the Asian hornet. This is the European hornet, Vespa crabro. The Asian hornet, not yet in Nottinghamshire, is slightly smaller than this and is mostly black with a bit of golden yellow on it. It looks a beautiful thing. A lot of people won't thank me for saying that. But what an insect. And look at that for a face. Look at those eyes. Almost looks as though it's got ear pods in, except these aren't so daft as ear pods. But what a super thing, look. And of course, on top, between the eyes, there's the ocelli, which are false eyes. Well, technically false eyes, but isn't that just a fabulous insect? So the European hornet, learn to love it. Don't kill this thinking or pretending it's an Asian hornet. This one isn't. This is our native hornet, and it does good work.